Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello, nerds. How are you? I'm good. I'm really excited about what we're going to discuss today. The idea came from a client of mine. So yesterday I was in a call with Brave and Bold alumni. Brave and Bold, for those of you who don't know, is my 6-month coaching program. And when my clients are done, they move into the alumni group and I do a meetup every quarter. So 4 times a year, we meet and we talk about what we're up to, what we're struggling with, what we are proud of, and we share insights, we share challenges. I do some coaching, and that was yesterday, and that was super fun. So this client's name is Erin. A little bit of a backstory. She did Brave and Bold last year, and now she is in the Saplings Side Business Starter program with me and Allison from She Dreams of Alpine. And when she was sharing her thoughts with the group yesterday, she said, "It is nice to be excited about something again." So if we go back in time to when she started Brave and Bold, she had a leather goods business where she was making and selling wallets and bags made of leather. She was not super passionate about that. She knew that something was missing for her, but she was worried about what people would think of her if she gave up that business. She didn't want to seem like the kind of person that changes their minds all the time. And so she kept going in that direction. But eventually, while we were working together, she started being more honest with herself and allowing herself to consider she might do something else. And so she started exploring. She started following her curiosity. She knew she wanted to do something that was related to the outdoors. So she started making videos on Instagram to help people get outside and do car camping. She tried a bunch of different things, and then eventually she had the idea for the business that she is currently working on. It's called One Stop Trail Shop, and she helps GMTers, so people who want to hike the John Muir Trail. She helps make the organization of all of that super simple for them. So if you want to check it out, it's onestoptrailshop.com. It's also One Stop Trail Shop on Instagram. And she was telling us about how different this venture felt to her. That's when she said it's exciting to be excited again. She has no issues showing up consistently and being committed to this project of hers because she sees herself going in that direction for a long time. It feels like home to her. It feels purposeful. So I asked her, what's your advice for people who want to be excited again? What would you tell them? And I loved the concept that she came up with. She said, you've got to listen to your ignored calling. So I asked her permission to record a podcast episode about this concept so that we could explore that together. Because I really think she put her finger on something massively important. Your ignored calling is the whisper in your mind that keeps gnawing at you, that keeps nudging you in a direction and that you keep trying to convince yourself is unreasonable. I'm going to give you a few examples from my own life. Back when I was in London, I had a voice in my mind that kept telling me to leave my partner and go back to Canada. But I kept pushing it down because I was like, no, we've built all this life together and he's a good person. Like, why would I throw that away? This is unreasonable. Then eventually I listened. And when I came back here a few years later, my next ignored calling was through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. I kept hearing this voice in my mind, like nudging me in that direction. You have to do it. You have to do it. You have to do it. And that was like at 10% of me. And the other 90% of my being was like, are you crazy? This is not for people like me. I'm not an athlete. I don't have any stamina. I don't have cardio. Stop annoying me. I kept trying to ignore that voice, but what often happens is the calling gets louder and louder and louder until you can't ignore it anymore. Well, some people ignore it all their life and wonder why they feel so miserable. Then my next calling was writing a book. I had that calling for so long, but I was like, but I'm not a good writer. Like, I didn't study writing. I haven't been writing since I was a kid. I don't have a lot of fancy vocabulary. My writing's too simple. All the ideas have been done. I'm not original enough. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And it took me 5 months. And every time I decide to stop ignoring my calling, I step into a new chapter of my life where I grow and I find so much joy and so much purpose. And then the last example that I'm going to give you is starting a podcast. I wanted to start a podcast for a long time, but I had the same arguments in my mind that I did with the book. I was like, well, who are you to start a podcast? You're too late to the podcast game. There's so many out there. You're not going to stand out. You don't have anything special to say. And now here we are, episode 104, and there's more than 1,000 listeners every week. That is crazy. That is crazy. And you know what? Podcasting is one of my favorite things to do every week. I love doing this. My favorite things are coaching and podcasting. If I could do just coaching and podcasting, I would be thrilled. But again, I had to decide to stop ignoring my calling, stop ignoring that little whisper in order to connect with that fulfillment that I experience every time I record a podcast and share it with you guys. So if you're in a place where you're not satisfied with your job, with your personal life, you feel empty, but you tell yourself that you don't know what you're supposed to do next, I want to suggest that you actually do know. You know, but you're scared. One of my clients, Jess, she finished Brave and Bold recently, and she told me, I started Brave and Bold because I thought I needed clarity. I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I needed clarity, but actually I needed courage. I needed courage because I knew deep down I was just really afraid. And so let's explore the reasons why you're afraid, or what you're actually afraid of that keeps you from pursuing the calling that's whispering in your ear. 3 reasons. Number 1, you're scared of not being good at it, not being good enough, not being capable. Number 2, you're scared of being judged, of people saying, who does she think she is? She's making a big mistake. Number 3, you're scared it's not going to work out. You're scared it's going to fall flat. You're scared it's going to fail. And the reason why this is paralyzing is because you might be generating your personal worth from values like competence, like ability, and success. Now, bear with me. I'm going to explain. If you get your worthiness as a human being from a value like competence, if you find a lot of pride in doing things well, in being good at what you do, you're not going to want to risk sucking at something, because what are you going to make it mean about yourself and about your worth as a human being? But trying something new comes with sucking. You're going to be bad at it at first, before you start getting better and before you have a chance to be great. To paraphrase Seth Godin, he wrote that you're signing up for days, weeks, or years of serial incompetence and occasional frustration on your way to a place where your flow is actually productive and in in service of the change you seek to make. If, for example, you generate your worth from likability, if you feel good about yourself when people think that you're nice, if you feel good about yourself when people look up to you and have good thoughts about you and your behavior, then you're going to be very wary of situations where you might be judged. And doing something different, going against the current, against the status quo, comes with judgment. It's the cost of going off the beaten path. And so what are you going to make it mean about you if you're used to generating your worth from being liked when you're being judged? It's going to feel like death. And lastly, if you generate your worth from success, like having a fancy job, being on top of it, having all of your ducks in a row, like you have a nice house, you have a nice car, people are impressed by the work that you do, then you're going to be very hesitant and uncertain about putting yourself in a situation where you might fail, where you might risk losing some of that status. So what is it for you? What are the fears that are getting in the way of you listening to your calling and taking action in that direction? In order to find the courage to pursue your ignored calling, you need to build the strength needed to experience incompetence, judgment, and failure without affecting your sense of worthiness. For example, let's say you try that thing you have in mind. You try writing a book and the book's not that good. Your first book's kind of bad, actually. Try and imagine a world in which it's not that bad. It doesn't say anything about you. All it says is that it's your first book and you can only get better from here. That you've tried, that you're practicing, that you're honing your craft. Let's say people judge you. Like, let's say your friends all gather together and talk about how bad your book is. Try and imagine a world where that's not a big deal. They just have opinions and it doesn't have to impact how you feel about yourself. You can recognize the truth in the criticism, like seeing the ways in which your writing could be improved, but without making it mean anything about your worth as a human being. And lastly, let's say that your book is a quote-unquote failure. Whatever that means to you, my definition is that you haven't reached the goal that you had in mind in the timeline that you had in mind. It doesn't mean you won't reach it eventually, but you haven't reached it in the time that you had expected. So let's say your goal is to sell 100,000 copies of your book in the first year and it's a flop. Maybe you sell 10. You sell 10 books to your mom, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, and your group of friends. And so you consider this a failure. Can you imagine a world in which that's also not a big deal? In which you're like, okay, well, I guess that didn't go as planned, but let's just keep going. Let's write another one and let's try to make the second one better. And then let's try to make the third one even better than that. And let's go from there and keep learning and keep getting better. At least I'm in the arena. Can you imagine that world where you don't make it mean that you are a failure? This is what we do in my program, Brave and Bold. I teach my clients how to be with the pain because it is painful. Doing something new and putting yourself out there feels like being naked on the hook in front of a crowd. That's also from Seth Godin. It is very challenging. You don't always know what you're doing. There's a lot of days where I feel like I'm improvising and I'm doing my best, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And it hurts when people have negative thoughts about what you do. When you get hateful messages, it hurts. We're human beings. And it's also disappointing when you put yourself out there, you create something and it quote unquote fails. It makes you sad. So there is pain in moving forward and trying new things. But I teach my clients to allow the pain to be there without being an asshole to themselves. I help them strengthen their sense of self so that taking risks doesn't feel like death. So that they can love themselves no matter what happens, no matter how it goes. Even if they go on a through hike and they end up quitting after 3 days, that they can be sad and disappointed and heartbroken, but not make it mean that they're a piece of shit. Because that's one thing that kept me from going on a through hike for a long time, is thinking, well, if I go and I give up, that means I'm a failure. And that, my friends, keeps you stuck and keeps you away from discovering what you're capable of and discovering what makes you feel truly fulfilled. So if you want help figuring that out, learning to move forward and try new things and be with the discomfort and make friends with the discomfort, join us in Brave and Bold. Doors to the program are going to open at the end of February, so get on the wait list by going to selfgrowthnerds.com/brave and bold. And if you're feeling confused about what you want, about what the next step is for you, try to stop being confused just for a minute and to be scared instead. What scares the shit out of you? Ask yourself that question and see the truth float up to the surface. All right? I love you so much, and I'm going to talk to you next week. You just listened to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. Make sure to subscribe and to find me on Instagram at Self-Growth Nerds. If you want individual help developing the confidence to create a more meaningful and exciting life, visit selfgrowthnerds.com today to learn how. Finally, I want to thank my friend Etienne Galano for editing this, and I want to thank you, kind-hearted souls, for growing into your truest, most courageous selves every day and making this world a better, more beautiful place. My name is Marie, and I will talk to you next week.